guys. This is week 6. Phew, time flies. Week 6 of term 2, and I'm really hoping I'm going to see you soon. Okay. Now, last week we learned about the periodic table, which is made out of a whole bunch of elements, about 100 or so elements that, as I said, actually build our whole universe, and everything in our world, or matter, we're just really dealing with matter here, is made out of these 100 or so elements. Now, these elements, they don't appear in nature on their own. They are usually actually combined together. So once we learn these building blocks, the elements, this week we're going to try and have some kind of idea how they build together other units that are called compounds. So this week is all about compounds. Now, we already start seeing some examples at the end of last week. So if you remember was it the last lesson? Anyway, one of the lessons last week, I showed you how some elements react with others, and it was some cool, really, really cool reaction. The first one, if you remember, was I was burning magnesium. So I had a magnesium strip, okay, like that. And when I burned it in gas, it gave a lot of heat and light. Okay, now that was possibly our first chemical reaction. And a chemical reaction is usually about two elements or more elements combined together to form what we call a compound. And there's a certain way of writing it. So let's just write it on the board. Okay, we had magnesium, and that combined with oxygen. Where was the oxygen? Of course, it was in the air. Okay, so plus oxygen. Okay, these two are elements. Each one of them are elements. If you can find it in the periodic table, then it's an element. And together they form a compound, which I think I told you about. That's called magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide. Now, there's a few words that I'm going to introduce you to here. It's not our emphasis for this year, but next year for sure it's going to be a big part. So, you see, this is a chemical reaction, okay? It always have an arrow there, never an equal sign, an arrow. That means you take these things and you form those things. Now, these things on the left side of the arrow are called reactants. Okay? We call them reactants because they react together. Okay, of course, guys, everything I write on the board, you must write as well. So when I finish this, pause me and copy that into your books. Okay? On the right side, we get the products of these reactions we call products. Makes sense, right? Okay, here we only have one product, but often we'll have more than one. Now, another way of writing this chemical equation, this is called a word equation, because we use the word. Another way of writing it is to use their symbols. And again, you know the symbols for at least the first 20. Okay? So the symbol for magnesium, remember what it is? Okay, it's Mg. Remembering the first letter has to be capital. And for oxygen, okay, the symbol is O. Now, I'm not expecting you, well, you will learn about it actually later on even today, but O will never be on its own. You'll never find one atom of oxygen floating, okay? They all come in pair. We will talk about it actually even in this lesson. So, O2, okay? We'll discuss that later on. Now, when these two elements combine together, they form MgO. Magnesium oxide is MgO. We put the symbols of magnesium oxygen close together to show it is a compound. Now, there are some issues with this. You can see there's only 2 oxygen here, 1 oxygen there, but we're not going to deal with that in grade 8. We'll leave that to grade 9. Okay? But that is your first chemical reaction equation. Whee! Okay. Now, let's write down a couple more, or at least one more reaction that we had a look. You remember that purple haze that came out? Remember that one? Okay. That was also a reaction between magnesium. Remember what did we add to it? Okay, it was magnesium powder in that case. We added iodine. Iodine. Okay. Now, iodine, okay, and magnesium are obviously elements. They are the reactants, and the product was magnesium, I think I mentioned that, magnesium iodide, okay. So you can see the iodine become I, okay. That's how we name compounds. We don't call it magnesium iodine, okay, that's just magnesium and iodine separate. They combine together, and we can hear it, a chemist can hear it by saying magnesium iodide. The same here, magnesium plus oxygen become magnesium oxide. Okay, it changes the ending of the word. Another thing we can notice here, that when we write down the compound, it's the metal that comes first. Okay, it's not just magnesium. I could have sodium here. We always write the metal before the non-metal, right? Because magnesium is a metal, oxygen, iodine. On the right side of the periodic table, they are non-metal. Okay, let's quickly write a symbol. Okay, so we still have the magnesium, iodine. Iodine also come in two. Okay, and what we get here is Mg. Just going to check it. Just hang on for a second. I had to just quickly check something in the periodic table. Magnesium iodide, okay, Mgi2. You can see it's a bit different. Here we had only one oxygen, combine the Mg, and here we have two iodine on the Mg. Why? You will learn next year, okay? We're going to pause here, and we'll carry on in a minute. Okay, so I've just written a definition here for a compound, and you need to remember these definitions. In chemistry and in physics as well, but mainly in chemistry, there is some kind of memory that we need to work on, okay? So a compound, okay, is when you have two or more, could be 3 or 4 elements, chemically combined together. I'll explain that in a second, in a fixed ratio. Okay, what does that mean? What does it mean chemically bounded, okay? We're not just taking magnesium and oxygen and sticky taping them or tying them a knot around them. We're not just mixing them around. Chemically bound means that there has been some kind of chemical reaction, and now there are some kind of chemical bonds. There's some kind of connection between the magnesium and oxygen. Magnesium oxide is not just a bit of magnesium and a bit of oxygen that are mixed together. No. They are chemically combined. It's a new material. It's a whole new material, magnesium oxide. You saw that. It was that white powder, grayish powder, which is very different to this metal magnesium. Okay? So magnesium oxide, it's a whole new material with its own properties. Okay? For example, magnesium, like any metal, conducts electricity. But that white powder doesn't conduct electricity, not at all. Okay? And the last word I wrote here, in a fixed ratio. What does it mean in a fixed ratio? It means we can't just take a little bit of magnesium, a bit more oxygen. We have to have a fixed ratio. And we can have a look at it here in a simple equation. Okay? MgO means that for every atom of magnesium, one atom of magnesium will be combined together with one atom of oxygen. Okay? That's not always the case. Well, it's always the case for magnesium oxide, but not for all compounds. For example, magnesium iodide, okay, which is the third reaction we saw, okay, for each one magnesium atom, we have 2 iodine atoms. So magnesium iodide will always have that ratio of 1 to 2. Okay? These numbers, these small numbers, tell you how many atoms for each atom. So for each one magnesium, we're going to have 2 iodine. Okay? And magnesium iodide will always be like that. For magnesium oxide, for each one atom of magnesium, we'll have 1 atom of oxygen. Forever. Okay? Again, I'm going to pause here. Okay? Copy, please, if you haven't done. And we're going to do work a little bit inside this thing, which we call molecule. Okay, so this is the last bit of this little video. I want to just give you a little bit more of a feeling of the names of the compound. And that's going to lead us to one more little idea. So these are experiments we haven't done, okay? But as a chemist, we can predict their names of a product. So you take a sodium, which is a metal, and chlorine. Okay? I can tell you, you don't know that it will happen, but I can tell you there will be a chemical reaction. They will form a compound, and that will be called, let's see if you can figure out the name. We start with a metal, which is sodium. So it will be sodium. Will it be sodium chlorine? No. You're right. It will be sodium chloride. Sodium chloride. And, by the way, sodium chloride is what you put on your chips when you eat. It's that white little stuff, not mayonnaise, salt. Okay? Calcium and nitrogen. What would that form? Okay? Well, it will form calcium. Put the metal first. And then nitrogen will become nitrite. Nitrite. Okay? So you've got the tools now to be able to name some compounds. Now let's look at the symbols. So sodium you need to know is Na. Chlorine you need to know is Cl. And what that form is NaCl. Okay? Right? Calcium is Ca. Nitrogen is N. Okay? Now the compound calcium nitrite is a little bit tricky, and you don't know, you're not supposed to know how I figured it out, but you know there's a Ca and N. But it turns out that there's 3 CAs on every 2 N. So the formula is Ca3N2. Now, you're not expected to know that. You will learn that next year. What you are expected to know is, first of all, these things, we didn't name them before. They are called molecules. Say molecules. Molecules. Fantastic. Now, these are atoms. Okay? When atoms combine together, they form a molecule. Just like when elements combine together, they form compounds. Atoms form together molecules. So an molecule to a compound is what an atom to the element. And what does that mean? Calcium nitrate is made out of a lot of those molecules. Okay? Now, let's try and understand. What does that mean? Okay, what do we have in a molecule Ca3N2? Well, there are 3 atoms of Ca, and there are 2 atoms of Na. Okay, we already spoke about that in a way. Okay? Over here, we've got, in sodium chloride, we have 1 atom of sodium and 1 atom of chlorine. So we're learning to read the information from this molecule. These tiny little numbers after the elements tell you how many atoms there are in that one molecule. The last thing that I need to tell you now, it's quite a packed lesson, okay, is talk about things like that. Okay? So we already noticed those 2 things, okay? This is oxygen, this is nitrogen, this is iodine. All these elements will never be in one single atom floating around. It's never going to happen. They are what we call diatomic molecules. Okay? Which means they form these molecules. Okay? It will be 2 oxygen bounded together. Look a bit like glasses, right? Iodine, 2 iodine atoms bounded together. It's still an element because it's just made out of iodine, but it's made out of molecules of iodine, not just atoms of iodine. Okay? We will come back to that when we compare compound mixtures, so no worries if you're a little bit confused. I'm going to put another video with a little bit of a demonstration of some of our ideas we spoke about it now. See you in a bit.